We're at Payne Elementary School in Washington, D.C., and we're about to give a bunch of students a challenge.
They're going to build some rockets.
And we brought along with us Rosa. She's a rocket scientist.
We're going to see if their rockets do this.
Or this.
We're going to see how high and how fast they go, and what our students learn along the way.
Come along with us as we build some model rockets.
This is STEM in 30. Our friend Rosa is already in the classroom talking with the students.
Let's head inside and meet her.
Well, hello everyone. I am very excited to be here. My name is Rosa Avalos Warren, and I am the Near Space Network Launch Vehicles and Robotics Network Director. And what I do for NASA is to make sure that we maintain continuous communication from the rocket and back here to Earth. So we make sure that either all of the robotic missions as well as the launch vehicle missions stay connected back to Earth, and that we get all that great data that we are gathering from all of these missions. Before working for NASA, when I was in middle school, my parents worked cleaning office spaces, and I actually would ask my parents if I could come with them to help them clean those offices. And there were actually some engineers that worked in this type of office spaces. So it's interesting that, I cleaned office spaces for, professionals and engineers way back then when I was in middle school. So that was my first actual job that I did before becoming part of NASA. And now I'm a rocket scientist, but absolutely within NASA, I've been honored to have worked for more than 30 NASA missions, for the International Space Station, for the Commercial Crew Program, for the Artemis program, for all of the various robotic missions, as well as launch vehicle missions, from the inception of those missions, and now being NASA Launch Vehicles and Robotics Network Director. So before we actually begin building our rocket, we need to make sure that we understand all of the various components that are part of the rocket. So let's get started. First, we begin with a nose cone. Now, when we look at this nose cone, we ask the question like, what is in that nose cone as part of the rocket? And in that nose cone, we have various missions, either crewed missions or also missions that take, major telescopes such as the James Webb Telescope or the Perseverance mission that went to Mars. And so the nose cone is a very critical part of the rocket in trying to make sure that we actually get the mission, all the way to either the moon, around the moon, to land on the moon, or to Mars and, possibly beyond. Okay, and now we also need to make sure that we understand to make sure that we have enough power to carry all of these great missions, either robotic or crewed missions. We also need to make sure that we have enough fuel. And the body of the rocket is so critical and essential to make that happen. And so this is called the body of the rocket. In addition to this, another essential part to make sure that we keep a good direction of the rocket going out of the Earth's atmosphere are the fins. Which, with such a massive rocket, we need to make sure that it actually stays stable and upward. Without the fins, the rocket may stumble as it's trying to leave Earth. So we need to make sure that we have a good design, and multiple teams work on this to make sure that the geometry of these fins is spot on. In addition to this, and that here we have a capsule, we also have various boosters that actually contain oxygen and hydrogen. And that is actually how we're able to have that force push the rocket outwards and out of this atmosphere, and also make sure that it's, forcing the vehicle on the right trajectory. And besides all of these great and amazing missions that we have, we need to make sure that as we're launching all of these missions and these rockets, that the robotic portion, or also the capsule that's carrying humans, stays in touch with us here back on Earth. And so in that way, we actually have different hardware, different parts of the capsule, or sometimes part of the launch vehicle that communicates back to Earth via different satellites that are right now orbiting our space. And also we have different missions that we have right now that will be waiting to return, such as the Artemis 1 mission. And so we have ground stations here on Earth, as well as satellites in space that are orbiting to make sure that we maintain continuous communication with all of these amazing NASA robotic and launch vehicle missions. So currently, we actually have the Artemis 1 mission that's ongoing right now, and that we're expecting to come back on December 11th and splash down back here on Earth. In this mission, we're actually going to have in the future carrying astronauts that are going to be orbiting the moon, and also will be landing on the moon in the future. We also have, as part of the Near Space Network, an International Space Station right now that's orbiting the Earth, that we need to make sure we are sustaining and sending different vehicles to the International Space Station, carrying different hardware experiments to make sure that we're advancing in technology and understanding also things that we may not know about. And that's what's amazing about all of these great missions, is that we're advancing and also helping humanity back here on Earth. And now your task is going to be to turn these rocket components into this, so you all will become rocket scientists. Are you ready?
Rockets have jobs. They have to get things off of Earth into space.
And how that is accomplished takes many different forms, each of them requiring a lot of trial and error.
Let's learn more about the engineering design process.
Engineers use the engineering design process to solve problems. You may be familiar with a scientific method or have used it to test hypotheses in science class. The engineering design process is similar. It's a series of steps we can use to solve a problem. It's useful because it's open-ended and allows for multiple solutions to the same problem. It's also iterative, which allows us to test new solutions and encourages us to try again when our solutions don't work the first time.
First step, define the problem. What's the issue? This is also where we think about constraints. What are the limitations we have in solving the problem? Let's see how this works in real life.
I'm starving! I want a peanut butter sandwich, but not just a plain peanut butter sandwich. I'm so hungry! I need to start making this sandwich now.
Our friend needs to be able to make a better PB&J using ingredients they already have at home.
Once we know what we're solving, we need to see if anyone else has ever faced a similar problem. Maybe their solution will solve our problem or inform us on how to create a different solution.
Now it's time to design our solution. Or in this case, make our recipe for the new PB&J being tested. When we design, we look at several solutions and then choose the best one to test.
I love the idea of using toasted bread to support my sandwich better. Maybe some cut up strawberries for texture. What if we tried chunky peanut butter? Yep, that's it. I'll make a peanut butter sandwich on toasted bread with strawberries and chunky peanut butter. I'll call it the Rocky Landing on the Red Planet.
Time to prototype. That means we get to build a model and test how it works. Or in this case, it's time to make our sandwich. You can also think about the prototype stage like writing a rough draft of a story.
Now that we've built our prototype, or sandwich, it's the test stage. This is where we see if our solution works. If it doesn't, you simply go back and try again.
It's delicious! But I wonder how I can make it better.
If your first design doesn't work with friends to create more design solutions. Build another prototype and test again.
It's important to share your solutions. Here's the recipe we made.
We'd love to hear what solutions you propose for a better PB&J. Send us videos or pictures of your sandwich. We might just give them a try.
Rockets carry all sorts of different things. People, supplies, satellites, even telescopes.
The things rockets carry are called payloads, and the rockets have to be designed specifically to get that payload into space.
Let's take a look at these different types of payloads.
Rockets carry many different types of things. These are called payloads. The types of payloads we usually hear about are those that are launched into space. They require very large rockets to move things out of Earth's gravity. The most famous payloads are people. In order to make payloads fit into rockets, NASA has become very creative in making very large things fit into very small spaces. The Mars rovers Spirit and Opportunity were folded into capsules surrounded by a series of giant airbags that provided a soft landing by bouncing them across the Martian landscape before coming to a stop where the rovers unpacked themselves and got to work.
The Hubble Space Telescope was designed to fit neatly into the Space Shuttle Discovery payload bay. But the James Webb Space Telescope was a different story. The James Webb Space Telescope is about half the size of a 737 airplane, and its sun shield is 69.5 feet by 46.5 feet. That's larger than a standard tennis court. In order to get into orbit, the telescope had to be folded and placed inside the 16-foot payload bay of an Ariane 5 rocket. The origami pattern on its primary mirror highlights the intersection between engineering and art that allowed the telescope to fold neatly into the payload of its launch vehicle. After it was deployed, it took 2 weeks for the telescope to unfold. Moving large payloads would be impossible if not for the imagination and ingenuity of engineers, scientists, and artists.
Rockets now seem like a part of everyday life.
And many things in your everyday life rely on satellites, which are launched by rockets.
But rockets haven't been around forever. Let's learn more about Robert Goddard.
The year was 1899, and Goddard was sitting in a cherry tree behind his parents' house. He was 17 years old. He had this vision of a spacecraft rising from the ground and traveling into space. Then he began a quest for how you could actually build a spacecraft. It took him 10 years to figure out that the rocket would work. It wasn't at all obvious at the time that the rocket was the way to go into space. Goddard was first and foremost an experimenter. He worked on rockets. The Smithsonian asked him to write a paper on his research. The paper was published at the beginning of 1920. It was called A Method of Reaching Extreme Altitudes. In 1920, the idea of space travel remained a fantasy. And here was this physics professor endorsed by the august Smithsonian Institution saying, yeah, spaceflight's not a crazy idea. We might be able to go there by developing rocketry. He became the first person to launch a liquid fuel rocket, and that's what he was most remembered for later in his life. But he was chasing this dream that he could find a practical way to go into space. He was always hoping that he was on the verge of a breakthrough, that this next rocket would be the big rocket that made it into space. He never was successful in doing that. He died on August the 10th, 1945. We celebrate Goddard because he was one of the earliest rocket pioneers. He inspired people to believe that space travel was possible, that it wasn't a crazy idea.
What happens to the rest of the rocket when the payload gets to space?
That's a great question. It used to be that pieces like the Saturn V F1 engines would fall into the ocean.
But today, engineers are designing rockets that can be used more than once. In 2002, amateur astronomer Bill Young found what he thought was an asteroid. However, as astronomers tracked it, they found that it was in an unusual orbit. It turns out this asteroid wasn't an asteroid at all. After doing some special observations, scientists discovered that the asteroid looked to have parts that were covered in the white paint NASA used to paint the Saturn V rockets. It was part of the upper stage of Apollo 12's Saturn V rocket from 1969 that took the second group of astronauts to the lunar surface. So what happens to the parts of a rocket that don't make it into space? Rockets are made up of several different parts, and over the years, those parts have evolved with changes in technology. The rockets people are most familiar with are those developed by NASA and their contractors to take people to the moon and the International Space Station, and that launch satellites into orbit. In the 1960s, NASA developed the Saturn V rocket to take the Apollo astronauts to the moon. That rocket had 3 stages. This means that the Saturn V rocket had 3 large parts to it. Each contained its own engines and propellant. After each stage did its job, it broke away, with some pieces falling back to Earth and ending up in the ocean, like the recently recovered F1 rocket now on display in the Destination Moon Gallery at the National Air and Space Museum. After Apollo came the Space Shuttle, a partially reusable spacecraft. The Space Shuttle consisted of 2 solid rocket boosters, an external tank, and the orbiter, which many people remember as the space plane. Like the Saturn V rocket, each stage broke away once its job was completed. Unlike the Saturn V, the shuttle's rocket boosters were retrieved from the ocean and reused. The orbiter landed like an airplane and was also reusable. And the external tank burned up in the Earth's atmosphere after the fuel had been used. The idea of reusable parts continues today. Many of today's rockets are reusable, even having stages that come back and land on Earth where they will be reused for a future launch.
So you all have done an amazing job. So thank you so much. Now what we're going to focus on is on the isolating variables part. And that is whenever we are supporting any missions or working in teams, we need to make sure that we are understanding and finding out if there are any issues. So anomalies can happen, but we need to make sure we understand what corrective actions we need to make. So you all have built the rockets now, right? But do you think that all of these rockets are going to be launching the same way?
I don't think that it will launch in the same direction because of how we build it and like how we put it down and stuff. I don't think it's just going to be a perfect shot.
That's a really good point because, but now I want to follow up that point with, do you all think you actually glued your fins in the same manner or the same configuration and straight up?
No, I don't think everybody will have the same thing because people will line up their stuff differently.
In your rockets, actually, whenever they launch and we see some type of nominal expectation is when the rocket is going to launch straight up, right? And the parachute is going to come out. And so those are the normal nominal characteristics that we expect. But we may also encounter some type of off-nominal scenarios, right? And those off-nominal scenarios may be, so the rocket is trying to launch and then a fin comes out. And then the rocket is diverted and off the trajectory you were expecting, right? Or it launches and the nose cone comes off, and then we actually have other failures that may come up. And so as the rocket scientists that you all are, you come back and say, the nose cone came off. Okay, let's find out why. Or if the fin came off, why did it come off? You know, and so that's how we learn. So for the next rocket, right, you already have your different lessons learned already accumulated, and you'll know better and improve, because that's what it is all about, improving and trying to make sure you're a better and better rocket scientist. So you all have done an amazing job. Thank you so much. And I want you all to come and work at NASA with me. I can't wait for you to join me. So are you all ready to launch rockets? As you can see, we're no longer at Payne Elementary School.
We've moved to Manassas, Virginia to an approved launch site.
Because it should come as no surprise that you cannot launch a rocket in a densely populated area.
So if you launch a model rocket, make sure you go to an approved site.
We've got some altitude trackers, safety goggles,
And a fire extinguisher and a bunch of kids ready to go.
Are you all ready to launch some rockets?
In 3, 2, 1.
My rocket, the engine needed to be replaced at first, but after that, it went really, really high.
It did really good. It went really high. It went like higher than I expected it to go. And there was a lot of smoke, so thankfully we had the goggles on.
I had fun because we got to launch our own rockets that we made, and we got to find them and look up in the sky and see where they were headed.
So our rocket, we didn't get to design it, but it was actually super fun to launch. We did actually end up losing it, but it was actually super fun.
Three, 2, 1.
Oh, that was a nice
3, 2, 1, go! In 3, 2, 1, go!
Unfortunately, we are out of time and we've got to get all of these students back to school.
You all did such an amazing job that I cannot wait to see you at NASA.
And if you liked today's episode, be sure to follow STEM in 30 on Facebook and Twitter and subscribe to the National Air and Space Museum's YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. You're gonna watch, and then you go, whoa! 3, 2, 1, go! And if you liked today's episode, be sure to follow STEM in 30 on Facebook.
His phone.
about that all week.
All right, let's
All right.
try it one more
Voices
time.
off.